was growing up, my dad would take me on camping trips every summer. When I was 17, he took me on a special graduation trip that was supposed to be 2 full weeks of deep woods camping. It took a day and a half just to reach our site. We got set up and slept in our separate tents. An hour before dawn, I woke up needing to pee, so I walked a few feet into the brush. I found a place to squat. While doing my business, I heard something behind me slithering through the grass. I jumped to find a king cobra emerging from the brush that I was just sitting next to. I know. We don't have those in the US. I know. Yet, here we are. It stood up. It raised its hood. It was a cobra. Its head was almost up to my chest. All I could do was back away slowly. It didn't move an inch, just stared at me until I was out of sight. Only then did I turn and run the rest of the way. My dad didn't believe me. I knew how it sounded, so I let it go. A few hours later, we were fishing, and he got to see for himself. He nearly lost his pole when he noticed it on the opposite bank. Again, just staring. It looked even taller than it had the previous night. Dad took out his pistol, hoping to at least scare it off, but the snake dove into the river before he could fire. We didn't like not knowing where it went, so we headed back. By the time we were eating our day's catch, the cobra was back. It positioned itself just outside our campsite, but this time its head was only a foot or two off the ground, like it was trying to be stealthy. I'm no snake expert, but I'm not unfamiliar with them either, and they don't stalk people. I don't care what kind of snake it is. They want nothing to do with humans. If you don't threaten them, they don't threaten you. The only thing we could figure is that some collector had released this thing into the wild, and we must be in its territory. My dad tried to shoot it but missed, and the snake shot back into the woods. We made sure to stay zipped in our tents until dawn, and then packed up our gear. There were plenty of other spots to set up that weren't encroaching on Cobra land. We followed the river down for half the day and found a nice clearing. This way we could make it back to the truck without the extra overnight when the time came, which we still expected to be over a week away. But that night we saw it again. At first we heard something big moving through the trees. We thought that it was a deer or maybe a boar, so we got up with the flashlights. The noise stopped instantly, like whatever it was had frozen in its tracks. We circled the perimeter twice, but didn't see anything, so we got ready for bed. Around 3, I woke up to something heavy walking through our camp. I figured whatever we scared off before was back, with its own territory beef, but it was so close to my tent, I didn't want to startle it by poking my head outside. Instead, I waited for it to wander further away. Then it stopped, and a few seconds later, I screamed as my dad's gun went off. It scared the absolute crap out of me. I knew something was wrong. We'd never actually had to shoot anything before. Just as my hand touched the zipper, my dad yelled for me to stay inside. I heard him walk around the campsite. He wouldn't answer any of my questions until he was finished, and even then, he wouldn't let me come outside. He had seen the snake and decided it was time to get out of the woods altogether. We planned to leave in the morning, but I didn't understand why he wouldn't just go into his own tent, where it was safe. Even if there was some kind of freak, rabid, horror movie snake, it wasn't going to use a zipper. Yet he insisted on standing guard. As soon as the sun started coming up, we were packing. I never seen my dad so scared before or since. His hands were shaking as he took down the tents, but he wouldn't talk about the snake. I was so thrown off by everything that I'd completely forgotten that something big had been lurking right next to me when the shot went off. I didn't remember until we were back in the truck and well onto the main road. That's when my dad finally came clean. The big thing had woken him up too, and unlike me, he didn't actually see it. He undid his flap just enough to see a large, dark, humanoid figure bent over my tent, like it was looking for an opening. Then, he watched in horror as it shifted into the cobra, almost like a humanoid shadow, melting and dissolving until only a snake remained. When he fired, he was certain he hit it, but it shot back into the woods, completely unaffected. I don't know what the hell that thing was, but I think it's safe to say we still don't have king cobras in the United States. This summer, I came home from my first year of college, which involved a 3-hour flight. Keep that in mind. Back in January, I began seeing a black, shaggy dog all over campus. The first time was when my roommate and I were walking back to our dorm kinda late. The dog was sitting in the middle of the walkway. It looked hungry, so I gave it my pizza crust. After that, I started seeing him everywhere. If I looked out my window before bed, he would be just inside the tree line, looking up at me. I'd catch glimpses of him as I went to class, but he only got close a few other times. On each occasion, I was either alone or with only one other person. When it was time to come home for the summer, my friend and I shared a pizza with him as a kind of going-away present the night before I flew home. Remember how I said it was a 3-hour flight, right? Yeah. So explain to me how that dog made it all the way to my parents' house. My room's window looks out into the backyard, and it was right there, staring up at me. There was no way that it could be the same one, so I went outside for a closer look. But he was gone. When I asked my parents about it the following morning, they said they hadn't gotten a dog, and they hadn't seen a new one at any of the neighbors' houses either. I was starting to wonder if I imagined the whole thing. That afternoon, my mom took me shopping, and as we backed out of the driveway, it was sitting on the curb across the street. She said that it must be a stray that just looked like the one from school, but I knew it was the same dog. I just didn't understand how it made the trip. I continued seeing it just like I had at school, only now I wasn't feeding it. I was officially creeped out. It was the first week of June when I saw it from my window while on the phone. The whole story spilled out of me, and my friend got pretty upset. She gave me that speech. How can you let that poor dog starve because you're being ridiculous? It felt like she restored a bit of sanity in me. Whatever the explanation for how it got there, it's just a dog, right? I was being awful. I felt so bad that I got off the phone, grabbed some leftover hamburger patties, and took them outside. The dog was waiting for me, but as I got closer, it limped away into the tree line. There was a small patch of woods between our house and the street behind us. Normally, I wouldn't have gone in, but I was worried about his limp. The idea that he got hurt while I was busy being afraid of a dog, it made me feel even worse, so I was extra eager to help. About 10 feet in, the overgrowth tripled, and I couldn't go any further in the dark. I threw the hamburgers thinking he would stop, but he only crawled deeper into the thicket. I didn't even have a flashlight, so I resigned myself to finding him in the morning. If my parents refused to take him in, we would at least get him to a shelter. But when I turned away, he made a sad, low, painful whimpering sound, and it broke my heart. I tried coaxing him out once more, but he wouldn't budge. Finally, I turned to leave again, and this time, there was movement. So I turned back, and I saw the dog's outline, but it shifted into something completely different. It was so dark in there, but I could tell that much. Something had changed. The dog was changing shape. I noped out of there so fast that I fell on my face. As I pulled myself up, I heard a deep male voice calling me by name. The dog, or whatever it actually was, could talk, and it was moving forward on 2 legs instead of 4. I ran back inside, made sure everything was locked, but nothing ever emerged from the woods. Needless to say, no one believes me. They think that I had some kind of nightmare. If it had ended that night, I could probably convince myself they were right and let it go. But the dog is still here. I see it all the time. I have no idea what to do. If I was the only one who could see it, I would agree with the mental breakdown. But my parents not only see it, they've fed it. I don't know which would be worse, having it follow me back to school next month, or having it stay with my parents. Someone tell me what to do.